What's up, Hoop Report Nation? It's your boy Manny here. Welcome to another edition of the Hoop Report, the NAIA Women's Basketball Podcast, episode 22. Wow, what a end of week 2, start of week 3 we've had already. Obviously, the big takeaways or the big implications are going to be for the polls that are going to come out this Wednesday. You guys are watching this or listening to this on Monday morning. We're going to go through not all the upsets, obviously, but we're going to talk about 12 upsets, how they're going to play out, my kind of predictions, so to speak, for the first official regular season polls and what I think is going to shake out. Now, I'm not going to put numbers to it. I'm not going to put, I think this team is going to be at this spot, this team, no. But I'll say, kind of my teams that I feel like are going to be moving up, possibly moving down, maybe staying in spot, the reasons I feel like that's going to happen, and a few other things as well. We'll start with kind of a recap from the polls from preseason. Again, quick touch on it. Preseason top 25, Dordt, Bethel, Campbellsville, Dakota State, Marion, Freed-Hardeman, Lewis and Clark State, St. Francis, Dakota Wesleyan, and Indiana Wesleyan, your top 10. Then Langston, Hastings, Mid-American Nazarene, Oregon Tech, Southern Oregon are 11 through 15. Carroll, Indiana Tech, Arizona Christian, St. Francis, Briar Cliff are 16 through 20. And then your last 5 are going to be Rocky Mountain, LSU, Shreveport, Shawnee State, Lindsey Wilson, Cumberland's. In the receiving votes picture, a lot of good teams in there. You had Governor State, Loyola, Rio Grande, Georgetown, Providence, Florida Memorial, Pikeville. Also teams like Friends, Milligan, Morningside, Mid-American Christian, LSUA, and a few others. Again, we're going to get right into it. Like I mentioned, 12 upsets. And that's just from kind of looking on websites. And I don't think I missed any of them in the sense of like counting them. But according to the NAIA website, according to the games that I watched, about 12 upsets. 12 upsets. That's a lot of upsets already in week 2. So it just kind of goes to show you the parity that we're kind of entering in with NAIA women's basketball this season. A lot to dive into. And I'm going to start. We're going to go in order. We're going to go in order 1 through 25. All right. I think the top 5 stays the same. I think you've got, Dordt, like I mentioned, Dordt, Dakota State, Campbellsville, Bethel, Marion. I think those 5 stay in that 5. And again, I'm not going to put numbers to it. I'm not going to say, this team's going to be number 1, no. But I think those are going to be the top 5. Whatever order, leave that up to the committee. But I do believe it will be those 5 in the top 5 in some order. I will say this. When we're talking about the game, kind of a loaded Tuesday, honestly. Dakota State versus Dordt, that will change some things if Dakota State wins. If Dakota State wins, I think, maybe Bethel moves up to 1. Dordt maybe goes to 2, no lower than 3. Maybe Dakota State jumps into 2. We'll see. But a Dordt win, I don't think really moves the needle for anybody, to be honest with you. So I do think the top 5 stay the same. Nothing really to talk about there. All 5 teams rightfully where they need to be at top of the polls. Then Freed-Hardeman, Lewis and Clark State, and St. Francis, Indiana, in any order. Those are the next 3 that I do believe will be in there from the top 10. Now, the first team that I think is going to kind of maybe hit a little bit of a dive, so to speak, Dakota Wesleyan, I think they fall out of the top 10. I do believe they're going to fall out of the top 10. They're 2-1 since the polls dropped. They were blown out by number 13 at the time, and Mid-American Nazarene on a neutral site. And I got to mention the neutral site because that's an important element in this. Not every upset is made the same, whether it's on the road, it's at your house, it's at a neutral site, whatever the case is. And again, when these coaches do meet, you talk about other things, so-and-so is injured, back-to-back games, travel games, whatever it is. Like, there's a lot of things that go into these games, not just who won, who lost. But there are a lot of other elements. I will say, Dakota Wesleyan falls out of the top 10. Again, they were number 9, so it's not like that's a nosedive. I just stay out of the top 10. They did have a good bounce-back blowout win against number 18 Arizona Christian, so that might help them a little bit to where maybe they stay in the top 10 at number 10, but I wouldn't be surprised if they come out of the top 10 when the polls do drop Wednesday morning. Indiana Wesleyan, I think they stay or they move up 1 spot. Yes, they lost, and their record, I believe right now, is 4-2. Those 2 losses are against the number 2 team in the country, number 3 team in the country. That they are still going to be possibly 2-3, if not flip-flop or whatever the case may be. So I don't think those games hurt you. Now, the game on Tuesday, and any game on Tuesday, again, Tuesday is a loaded schedule with the Dordt game, for example, like I just mentioned, against Dakota State, and then now Indiana Wesleyan and Indiana Tech, who's number 17 right now. The Tuesday games will not affect Wednesday. They do not affect the polls. So, if your team wins, let's say the Indiana Tech, for Indiana Tech fans out there, let's say they go into, or they welcome I will win, and they blow them out by 30, whatever it is. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but let's just say that for argument's sake it does. That will not be represented or reflected in the polls that next morning. All right. These coaches got to fly in. They got to sit down in front of a laptop. They got to talk for hours. Got to do all this kind of stuff. So it's going to take all day. By Tuesday night, the polls will be done. I'm pretty confident saying that. Again, this is kind of just from talking to coaches around the NAIA, from talking to people at the NAIA, just kind of how things normally work. The Tuesday games will not have any implication on these polls. Now, the next polls that come out in 2 weeks from this week, that's where we'll probably see, like, that's where that game against, Dorton, Dakota State, and Indiana Wesleyan, Indiana Tech, that's where those games are going to really matter when we talk about resume and those type of things. But for right now, for just so everybody kind of understands, it's still a big game. I think it's going to be massive for both teams, but I don't think it's going to be replicated in these current polls coming out. So that really just means for Indiana Wesleyan, you're 4-2, your 2 losses against the top 2 of the top 3 teams in the country. I don't think you need to necessarily move anywhere. Again, they might move up to 9 because, again, Dakota Wesleyan might drop down at least 1 spot. I do believe they should drop down just because, again, you got upset by a lower seed, just kind of how it works. So that's really the only movement I see for the top 10. Again, 1 through 5, same order. Freed-Hardeman, Lewis and Clark State, St. Francis, any order in the next 3. I think Dakota Wesleyan will probably drop out of the top 10 or be number 10, and then Indiana Wesleyan might move up just because their strength of schedule has been very tough. And, again, those games were not blowouts. They were still competitive games throughout. Langston, I think you stay between 11 and 13. Not really too much resume building. Again, there's going to be a lot of teams, both top 25 and receiving votes, that are benefiting from upsets around them. So I think Langston might be one of those where the only real quality opponent you've had so far was Loyola, and you won that game. So you won the game you needed to win. You handle business everywhere else. I think you stay in that window. Again, they were number 11. I think you stay there. You could sneak into number 10 if they drop Dakota Wesleyan all the way out of the top 10. Like I said, they might. So maybe top 10 would probably be the highest I could see them going. But I don't think they drop any lower than 11, 12. And again, 13 is pushing it, in my opinion. I think Langston is comfortably at that number 11 spot, 10, 11 right there. Hastings, got them going down to 15. You're 2-2 right now. You lost to unranked Sterling. You lost to receiving votes Friends in double overtime. Yes, it was at Friends, but I still under a loss. That it's a tough way to end that game for those who watched that one live and even watched it on repeat. I don't think it's too much to say. Again, you're 2-2, and you lost to an unranked opponent and a receiving votes team that wasn't even on the cusp of the top 25. Friends, when we look at, I numbered the receiving votes team. So, like, number 1 was Governor State, and then number 25 was Hope International, who was the last team to receive votes in the preseason polls, and Friends was number 22. So they're towards the bottom of receiving votes. It's going to hurt your resume. So I do believe they dropped from 12 to 15. Not a crazy drop. And again, what hurts Hastings is that there are a lot of teams below them that did very well in these first 2 weeks of the season. So I do think it's going to be reflected in their dropping, where they didn't have a great start through 4 games. Again, it's only 4 games. I'm not saying that this team is going to be, panic alarms, all that kind of stuff. No, but you got to play with what we're at right now. Right now, you're 2-2, and you've got a lot of teams around you that are doing much better than you in the current form, in the current state of the season. Mid-American Nazarene, I think they move up in the top 10. They could be top 10, top 11. Again, they were number 13 when the polls came out. Obviously, 3-1. The Concordia loss does hurt. It does hurt an unranked opponent, but that Dakota Wesleyan win, I do think, will outweigh the loss against Concordia. You get into the top 10. That's where I kind of round out my top 10 with the first 8 that I mentioned. Then Indiana Wesleyan, Langston, and Mid-American Nazarene are the next 3 that I think, in some order, they're going to have in the top 10, and then one team will just be on the cusp. Could be Mid-American Nazarene. Again, I could see them moving up to 11. I'm comfortable with saying Iowa will be in the top 10. It's Langston and Mid-American Nazarene that I'm kind of flipping back and forth on which team. In my opinion, the Mid-American Nazarene win against Dakota Wesleyan is obviously more impressive, in my opinion, than the Langston one. But at the same time, Langston did handle a very tough Loyola team, and it was at Langston's house. So, again, there's a lot of things that go into it. I'm not trying to deep dive. I'll try and keep myself out of those deep diving avenues when we talk about these things. But I do think that's where those 2 teams are. One will be 11, one will be 10. I think that's going to round out my top 10, top 11 right now. Again, predicting the polls. Heading over to Oregon Tech, I think they stay and move up 1 or 2 spots. Nothing too much to talk about there, in my opinion, from their season so far. Very good season. Nothing crazy. Nothing that stands out. Again, a team that will benefit from everybody around them kind of having upset losses throughout the season so far. Southern Oregon, I think you're dropping closer to number 20. They were number 15. I'm not saying they're going to go below 20, but I do think they get closer to that number. 2-2 in the season. You get upset by receiving votes Montana Tech, and unranked Montana Western. It's just going to hurt your record. It's just going to hurt your resume. That's just kind of what it comes down to. Still a really good team. Still a team that I think is going to be in the top 25, top 15 picture most of the season. They'll have some bounce back opportunities in the Cascade for sure, but I do think right now you're getting closer to the number 20 spot just because, again, a receiving votes loss, an unranked loss, and now you're 2-2 on the season. If you're a 4-0, I'd be comfortable in you saying maybe even moving up, but I think you're going to drop a little bit closer to the number 20 spot. Not exactly a specific number in my opinion, but just dropping a little bit lower altogether. Carroll stays within the same range. Again, they were looking at them. They were number 16. They could, again, benefit from the Southern Oregon dropping. They could go up to 15. They could stay right there at 16. I don't think they drop. Again, I don't know. The one thing I'm not going to be, and I'm going to be honest about this, the one thing I'm not certain on how much it affects is if you don't play any quality opponents throughout, these times within these polls. And it happens a lot with some receiving votes teams that we're going to get to in a minute here because, it's definitely a granted thing. The rankings will represent what you've done so far between the last polls and the current polls. If you haven't played anybody, I don't know, does the committee hold that against you? Does it kind of whatever? I don't really know what will happen in those situations. So my thing is going to be, what do you do in those moments? What does the committee decide when they talk about, oh, this team, they didn't really play too much, or they didn't play too many good teams, but they're undefeated. But so that's kind of where I'm kind of curious on, and my continued understanding of the poll and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of where Carroll, Oregon Tech, some nice wins, but nothing crazy that's gonna be like, oh, that's gonna help them or hurt them or anything like that. Indiana Tech, again, like I mentioned, that Iowa game will not count towards these polls. So we cannot talk about that game with these respective polls. We will touch on that game and all the Tuesday games that I'm really excited about in a minute here, along with some fall conference games that are coming up or have already happened. For Indiana Tech, they move closer to the top 20 because the loss to Huntington. Again, you lose to a receiving votes team, and a team that, in my opinion, that will win saved them. And we haven't touched any of the receiving votes teams, and we can slightly touch on Huntington real quick just because, again, they did lose to number 24, Lindsey Wilson, and number 25, Cumberlands of Kentucky. So they needed that Indiana Tech win to keep them in the receiving votes picture. But I do think it hurts Indiana Tech. I say closer to 20, but in reality, I think they're saved by Southern Oregon losing those 2 games, where instead of two tough losses, again, Southern Oregon has, you only have one, and it's a receiving votes team, so it's not like it's a team that's not in the national picture or anything like that, so it could save them a little bit, but I do think there is a world where they drop at least one spot. Now that I'm kind of rethinking it and looking at the notes and kind of reading it back, I think they probably will stay 17 or go maybe up to 15 if the committee's feeling generous, but more like 16, 17 will be that range for the Warriors from Indiana Tech. Arizona Christian, I got them all the way out of the top 25. 0-4, three of those losses against unranked opponents. Not much to say. I think they'll be in receiving votes. I don't think they're going to be all the way out. Now, if that happens, that's beyond my control. I was not expecting that. Would I be surprised? No. Again, you're number 18 in the country coming out of the preseason polls. You go 0-4, 3 losses against unranked opponents. Not the craziest thing in the world to think that you're going to be out of the top 25 and receiving votes picture altogether. With that being said, you have some opportunities to get back into it. You do have some credibility throughout the country. You just got to be able to get back in the win columns, really. And again, not going to sit here and say that I've deep dived into the team and I know what's going on right now. I'm just going off of what I've seen so far, not from a game standpoint, but just from a standpoint of what we're doing and those type of things. 0-4 hurts. It's flat out what it is. They could turn around, go the next 4 games, win them all, win some great games in their conference, and then who knows. But right now, I do think they're going to be out of the top 25. My opinion, they'll still be receiving votes, but they'll be out of the top 25. St. Francis, Illinois, they stay or probably move up due to the other upsets around them. I think looking at from 19, I think 17 is definitely within play for them. I don't think they go any lower, but I do think 17 is completely, I think it's realistic, and I think it's appropriate for that team. Briarcliff, I think they jump in the top 15. I look at this Briarcliff team and what they're doing right now. I look at them as Marion last year. Yeah, last year. And what I mean by that is Marion 2 years ago, so not last year but the year before, they were the number one team in the country, number one team in the national tournament, I should say. And, they had credibility throughout that. But then last year, the polls came out preseason receiving votes. Kind of crazy, my opinion. The first polls come out of the regular season, they go from receiving votes to number 19 in the country. I think Briarcliff has the same thing. I do not believe they should have been number 20 to start the preseason. I don't think so. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I don't believe they should have been 20. Now, am I going to say here top 10? No. Top 15, 13, 14? I think it's completely realistic. I get that they have a new coach, but it's a promotion coach. It's not like it's a new hire altogether. So kind of surprised by that. And I think 5-0 now, all wins coming above 12 points or more. None of them being ranked opponents from what I saw. But at the same time, with these type of teams, I feel like the committee just wants to see, is it still going to be the same Briarcliff team? Clearly it is. Again, upsets around you. I can see you jumping 5 spots at least. I think that's a completely realistic possibility. And I'll even give them just 15. Give them 15, I'm cool with that. But I do think they need to be in the top 15 when Wednesday morning comes around. LSU Shreveport. I think they stay outside the top 20, but they're still in the top 25. They were number 22. I skipped Rocky Mountain. For Rocky Mountain, I think they'll stay where they are. I don't think that anything really happened for them that has kind of shifted the momentum, in my opinion. And so I think they're going to stay right where they are. I don't think they could flirt with over 20 though, so I'll give them that credit. But I think they'll stay right where they are. But like I was saying with LSU Shreveport, outside the top 20, 3-1. The upset, getting upset by Loyola just this past weekend or just this past Thursday is going to hurt them a little bit. So I think that's what keeps them out of the top 25. But I'll kind of preview it. I do think Loyola will be in the top 25, and we'll talk about that in the receiving votes teams in a minute here. But I do think they'll be in there, so I think it helps LSU Shreveport a little bit. It doesn't hurt them as much as it could have if Loyola didn't have a great start to the season or whatever the case may be. So I think they stay top 25, but they stay out of the top 20 for right now. Shawnee State, another team, in my opinion, they drop out of the top 25. 1-1, upset by unranked Wibbler Forest, 39-50. It's not as bad, in my opinion, as obviously 0-4 for Arizona Christian, but you lose to an unranked team in a blowout. It was almost not almost a 20, but it was close to getting to that point. It wasn't a 1-point game, something like that, so I do think it's going to hurt them. And you were already 23, I believe. Yeah, you're already 23, and the two teams below you will be moving up. And I think there's teams in the receiving votes picture that are going to move up as well, so I think you're going to drop into that receiving votes category of the polls. Again, these are all just kind of quick takes on why I think things are going to happen, how things might shake out. I could be completely wrong, and it is what it is. But I do think it just kind of gives a good idea of where we're at right now, kind of give everybody an idea heading into the polls. Okay, what's happening, what happened around the country that maybe I didn't hear about, and so that's what I'm here for. Like I said, the teams below Shawnee State, Lindsey Wilson, they have a chance at 15. They had one, I should say. That loss to unranked GGC hurt them. The ceiling now for me, 17-18. Still a high jump, and I think it's warranted. I mean, you're 3-1. You dominated receiving votes, Huntington and Milligan. So those teams that they kind of, the way I break down the polls, top 10, to me, national contending teams. Like red banner teams, legitimately. 11 through 15, playoff tournament teams that are guaranteed to win multiple games and make a deep run at it. 16 through 20, dark horse, teams that you get a good bracket, you get a good quadrant, you get hot at the right time, could do something interesting. 21 and 25, in my opinion, you're still a national tournament team, but you're kind of feeling the pressure from those teams behind you in the receiving votes picture. kind of look at that. That's kind of how the breakdown for me is. So when you're 25-24 especially, the committee probably thinks like, we'll give you the nod, but understand there's some teams behind you that we think might be able to jump that. They handled business against two of those teams in Milligan and Huntington. And again, Huntington beat Indiana Tech, so that helps Lindsey Wilson's case here. For you to beat a team that beat number 17 handedly, very, very good for your resume building prowess right now. So I do think 17-18 is the ceiling. That's the highest they can go. I'm not saying they're going to jump that high, but I don't think they go any higher than that, and even 17 is pushing it. I probably stick more with 18 as the ceiling for Lindsey Wilson Blue Raiders right now. Definitely top 20, but I think 18 is pushing it. But that's kind of where I'm going to sit with. For Cumberland of Kentucky, they could have the highest jump. They could go from 25 to 15. I might be a little bit of a reach, possibly, but hey, 5-0, you blew out Huntington and Milligan. What else you need to say? I know coming into this season, they were one of the teams that, and I was one of those people, we were one of those people, me and Lex, you lose the Monday Sisters. What is it going to look like this year? Such a perennial duo in the country is no longer there. I think it was rightfully, questioned at the beginning of the year. Questions been answered in the name of Joy Kendrick, and I don't think it's a shocker. I do believe she was going to have a great year. She's had an amazing start to the season, and the team around her has clearly stepped up and been able to fill that void. Granted, non-conference is one thing, the Mid-South is another, but 5-0, and again, you blew out two teams that had solid starts to their season. It helps your resume, and I do think they have a chance of getting up to number 15 and staying there. I would say they have a chance at 15 more than Lindsey Wilson does, obviously. If Lindsey Wilson hadn't lost that game to GGC, I still go the Patriots jumping to that 15th spot, but I do think now, more comfortably than ever, the Cumberland Patriots have the chance of getting the highest jump, and I'm going to keep an eye on that when the polls do come out. So that's kind of my prediction on how I think the top 25 is going to shake out a little bit from a standpoint of upsets and wins and stuff like that. Now, going over to the receiving votes side of things. Break this down kind of like tiers. I've got receiving votes teams, and I've got two teams that I think are going to join the receiving votes picture when the polls come out. First up, these three teams I feel like get in the top 25. I said Shawnee State and Arizona Christian, in my opinion, probably drop out of the top 25. That's two teams. I feel like it's going to be a dark horse in there that falls out. Could be LSU Shreveport. They're the next team that I kind of have on the bubble, so to speak. So three teams. So I went with three teams to replace those three. Loyola, Montana Tech, and Friends. I think those three get the top 25 nod. Now, out of the three, the one that I think just missed out is Friends. Why? Loyola, I think you're in the 22 to 25 range. I think you're 3-1. Your only loss is to number 11 Langston. Understandable loss. But then you blow out the LSU Shreveport and LSU Alexandria duo, one receiving votes, one number 22 in the country. I think that's enough to get you in the top 25. That should be enough. I'm penciling that in as a safe bet. Montana Tech, you're undefeated, 4-0. I think top 20 is actually in play for Montana Tech. You have wins over number 15, Southern Oregon, receiving votes, College of Idaho, both by double digits. They were both at home. Got to definitely mention that, of course. But that one loss makes a difference. When Loyola played a top 15 team, they lost. When Montana Tech played a top 15 team, they won. Sometimes it's that simple, especially at this point of the year, where we're not really talking too much about, okay, you played this person, you won this game. Okay, maybe we're going to have to say that for the end of the year. But right now, we're just talking about this small sample size. I think Montana Tech has a chance of jumping pretty high in the top 20. Friends, and honestly, now looking at this, because I just said that one loss, maybe Loyola is the team that actually might get hurt and get number 25, and I'm actually going to change that. I think they will get number 25, and they're the last team, the team on the bubble to get in or just miss out on that number, because in Friends' case, they're 3-0, so they're undefeated too. Again, one notch better than Loyola. Granted, they've played one game less. It is what it is. You blow out receiving votes Mid-American Christian. You beat number 12 Hastings, and again, while they have played one game less, they played a top 15 team. They won. Loyola played a top 15 team. They lost. If Loyola would have won that game, no doubt about it, I'm giving them the nod because it was also at Langston, if I remember correctly. So not only did you would have beat a number 11 team in the country, you would have beat them at their place. That's more than enough to edge them into that conversation. And then if it was at Loyola, and I'm remembering incorrectly, it would have been the same thing as Friends. Friends played Hastings at Friends, so it's not like it would have been anything different. So I do think Friends gets that 22 to 25 range that I had Loyola at. Montana Tech gets top 20. And then Loyola gets, if they get in, it's probably 25, 24. I think that's where I'll kind of put them at. I do know, obviously, Friends has the highest win out of those three teams with number 12, but Montana Tech has another game under you, 4-0. I'm not, and it's hard to say, like, I'm not punishing Friends for not playing an extra game. And I feel like I am, so I'm not really going to say that, but that's not my intentions. 4-0, 3-0. It is what it is. If we did the standings and the system put it in, you have the 4-0 team above the 3-0 team. That's kind of how it works. So that's kind of my teams that I feel like are very comfortably getting a top 25 nod, so to speak. The two teams that I think will replace the two teams that I knocked out are Montana Tech and Friend. I think they get in. Loyola is that one team that could get number 25 or maybe just miss out and be the number one team in receiving votes. The next tier, the next ups that I have, Providence and Columbia of Missouri. They beat at least one top 25 team and are undefeated. That's why I feel like they're next up. I know they kind of fit the criteria of these other three teams above them, but I just feel like those teams above them that I just mentioned, I don't know. It's a gut feeling. Could have all five been in the same of like getting that nod or maybe just missing out. But I think I wanted to be more specific with it, and just something about it. And you know what it was? The fact that, and it's right there where I said it, at least one. The three teams above them played two or more. Langston played three games against a receiving votes or top 25. Montana Tech played 2 games. And then Friends played 2 games. Providence and Columbia played only 1. Again, that kind of will play a factor in the decision-making process. Again, both teams are undefeated. Both teams played at least one, or beat at least one, I should say. But I do think the number of quality opponents you play obviously does matter. Huntington is a weird one. They're in their own tier, to be honest with you guys, because you lose to 2 top 25 teams in blowouts in University of Cumberland and Lindsey Wilson. Okay? Happens. But then you beat Indiana Tech, that's number 17, at home. And dominated the games you were supposed to dominate. So, I mean, you were number 15 in the receiving votes picture. I think you definitely go up. Do I think you jump up to, like, top 10? Yeah. Above 9? Probably not. But I do think Huntington takes a big jump in the receiving votes picture, especially because, and I'm going to get into it, and again, the receiving votes teams were the ones that had this more than the top 25 teams. So many receiving votes teams just did not play quality opponents yet. The main ones, Governor State, Rio Grande, Georgetown, Southeastern, William Carey, Morningside, all are undefeated, but didn't play a top 25 receiving votes team so far. But they do have some quality wins against some unranked opponents. So these teams, I'm like, probably stay where they are. Again, Georgetown, Rio Grande, Governor State, and Southeastern, William Carey, Morningside. So Morningside is the lowest one at 20. They probably could go up a little bit just because some of the teams above them did lose to some unranked teams. William Carey probably stays where they are, moves a little bit up. They were number 14 in the receiving votes picture. I think Governor State, Rio Grande, and Georgetown stay where they are. Southeastern might move up closer into the top 5. But again, those teams are just kind of hard to kind of gauge what's going on because they haven't played a ranked opponent just yet. Now, Florida Memorial, Xavier, same thing. I don't think they have quality opponents on their schedule right now, though. I think Florida Memorial's only game that counts, that's not an exhibition game, was University of Fort Lauderdale, so I can't really do anything with that. Same thing with Xavier. I don't think they have the quality opponents that the other teams I just mentioned have above them. So they could drop back just because of that. I don't think it's like a nosedive or off the cliff, but maybe 1, max 2 spots, or they'll stay right where they are. Again, Florida Memorial number 6 in the receiving votes picture and Xavier number 9. They could stay, or they could move down. But I don't think that's really just kind of the breakdown I have for those two teams. Pikeville, Evangel, Mid-American Christian, they stay in the receiving votes. Could be a small drop. Now, and I'll break each one of these down. Pikeville, your only one game is going to count towards their resume because they only played one game. I think the other two games were exhibitions. You lost number 5, Marion. Not going to penalize you for that one. You were on the road. It happens. I do think it was a bad loss in the sense of the score, obviously, but it's still the number 5 team in the country. We're not going to, I like that game. I was interested to see how Pikeville did in that game. Did I think they were going to win that game? No, but I would have liked to see a closer score for sure. You need these games, though. Obviously I had my interview with Coach Williams, and he said, these are testing games. Get tested by some of these teams. So I think it served its purpose. I do think that team will be better and is better than what the record than the score showed. But again, I don't know how to gauge that. It's only one game. Only one game, and you lost to the top 5 team in the country. Does it really do they penalize you that much? You were number 7. Does the penalty mean you drop out of the top 10 in receiving votes? I don't think so. Maybe 9 or 10. But I don't think you'd go any farther than that. For Evangel, you're 2-1, but you lost to receiving votes Columbia by 8. Evangel's number 13. Columbia was 8. They're now looking at maybe being a top 25 team. Probably stay where you are. I don't think you're going to move. Mid-American Christian, 3-1, but you lost to receiving votes Friends, that I think is going to make a massive jump this polls. Because of the success from them, I think they actually probably stay where they're at. And Mid-American Christian was number 19, so I don't think they're going to drop any lower. I think they stay where they're at. Grandview, Milligan, William Baptist, and Hope could drop after 3-3 starts. Or could drop after their starts. Because Grandview, 3-3, they're the ones that were 3-3. 2 losses versus number 20, Briarcliff, and number 1, Dort. Not going to hold that against you a lot. But every loss obviously matters. Games were on the road, which I kind of give credit to. The Briarcliff game was only by 8 points. So that's the one game that wasn't under was under 12 points when I talked about Briarcliff earlier. That was the one game. Not bad. Not bad. Nice little resume, little notch on the belt, but it's still a loss that we have to take as that. For Milligan, they just had a tough schedule, man. I mean, 1-2, but both lost to the top 25 teams. At the end of the day, though, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt you a little bit. Milligan was number 21. They're in jeopardy of falling out of the receiving votes picture for now. But I think they're going to get back into it. But as of right now, in the short sample size, they're in jeopardy of falling out. For Grandview, you were number 12. I think you stay in. Probably drop a little bit, but you're going to stay in. William Baptist and Hope. 1 loss of the season, but to unranked teams, and no top 25 in receiving votes wins under your belt just yet. 24 and 25, the last 2 teams in the receiving votes picture, going to have to say they're going to drop out for right now. College of Idaho, Olivia Nazarene are in danger of dropping out of the receiving votes picture. For College of Idaho, you're 0-2. You lost to receiving votes Montana Tech, unranked Montana Western, and then Olivia Nazarene, 2 unranked losses. Both were on the road, though. Could save you that they were on the road, and the second one against Taylor, I believe, was the one by 1 point. No, it was Siena Heights that was by 1 point. Taylor was about 10-point game, actually. Out of those 2 teams, I would lean more towards College of Idaho staying in the receiving votes. You were number 16. Olivia Nazarene was 23. Those last 3 teams I just mentioned are going to be in jeopardy of falling out for sure. For College of Idaho, you're just probably dropping closer to the bottom of the receiving votes than the top. For Wayland Baptist, LSUA, I think you drop out of the receiving votes picture altogether. Wayland Baptist, you were 17. You're 0-3. You lost to number 16 Carroll, receiving votes Providence, and unranked Montana University Northern. Yes, 16 is an understandable loss. Receiving votes is understandable, kind of, but then unranked is just not going to cut it. If you win that unranked game and the receiving votes game, you probably stay within the 17. I know 17, the receiving votes to out altogether is a pretty hefty jump or hefty fall, but that's just kind of how the polls work sometimes. I think there have been some really good teams across the country. I'm only going to mention 2, but I think there's been a lot that have a legit case of being receiving votes at least in these next polls. For LSUA, you're 1-3, receiving votes, Loyola loss, unranked Texas Wesleyan loss, Oklahoma Wesleyan loss. Need I say more? So I do think it's going to be a situation where if you win the receiving votes game against Loyola, you're now 2-2, but you still have an 2 unranked losses on your schedule so far. it probably behooves you to win at least one of those unranked games, but didn't happen. So I do think they are in jeopardy and will probably fall out altogether of the receiving votes picture. The last kind of breakdown that I have are the new teams. Could have picked a lot of teams. NAIA is too big. I'm going to stick with the teams that I feel like I've heard about the most, I've seen the most, I've been able to kind of follow the most. Let me tell y'all something. Whatever they're doing in Georgia Gwinnett needs to be studied. It needs to have a 30 for 30 on ESPN. It needs to have a Netflix docuseries. It needs to have something. Because, wow. It is a round of applause for that. 5-1. An impressive win over Lindsey Wilson. Yes, it was at home, but still impressive. What hurts me, and I gotta be realistic. That Spartanburg loss is going to hurt. So if they would have been 6-0 going into Wednesday's polls, there's a world where they're comfortably in the receiving votes picture. I mean 15 and above. For reference, that's where like Huntington, William Carey, and Evangel are as of the last polls. That loss, I think, brings them on the other side of the top 15. So I'm looking at the Morningside, Mid-American Christian, LSUA, 2019-18. That range. I think they've done that good. Yes, it's just one ranked win. But you're dominating a lot of these teams that you're supposed to dominate that are unranked. And Lindsey Wilson, we can play the game a little bit. They beat Huntington and Milligan, who are receiving those teams by 20. You then beat Lindsey Wilson by 3 in a close game. I got to give some credit to that. And I think the coaches will do that for sure. So I do think GGC gets a receiving votes, gets 2 letters next to their name in what has probably been one of the best starts to a first season of a program for women's basketball in the NAIA in a very long time. I'm here for it. Lex would say I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm driving the bus. I'm not driving the bus because I didn't jump on the bus from the beginning, but I like a spot on the bus if you guys will allow me to be on there. I like a spot on the bus. I'll be at the next bus stop if y'all want to pick me up. The other team that I was high on from day one, Cumberland of Tennessee. You're 6-1. No games were within 10 points. What hurts you a little bit, no ranked wins or unranked wins. Or no ranked top 25 or receiving votes wins is what I meant to say. It hurts for sure, but given the fact that some of these teams around the receiving votes picture lost to unranked teams, I think they have the ability to just sneak in at the bottom, maybe comfortably above 20. But I do think they get in. I think they've done a very good job at dominating their games that they need to dominate. I've seen this team up close and personal. They have been very, very improved from last year from an offensive standpoint. And again, one of those teams we're going to talk about in a minute here for that Tuesday matinee that we have of games. That's going to do it for the top 25 receiving votes part of this episode. We're going to head over now to fall conference games. Kind of a loaded episode here just because I kind of want to touch on a lot of things. So I'm going to try and breeze through this conference part as quickly as I can because there's not too much to deep dive into. I'm going to talk about the HBCU conference game that happened between Talladega and Philander Smith. Then I'm going to touch on the AAC, the CCAC, and the Frontier, just telling about who I think will win those games. No real breakdown, just kind of a gut feeling, a quick look over the teams, and I feel like I'll even give an upset game to watch for those 3 conferences, or for those 2 conferences, really, because the Frontier only has 1 game being played in week 3. I know there are some games on Friday that'll come out later in the week when we do the midweek episode, but I'll have some upset games for you guys to watch, and I'll even give you like a score of how much I think the team will win by. For HBCU, Talladega beats Philander Smith 61-62. It was a fourth quarter game. And what I mean by that is Talladega outscored Philander Smith 28-14. And honestly, I'm not even going to say Talladega did it. It wasn't Talladega. It was Sierra Myers and Courtney Lowe who combined for 22 points, 11 each, to outscore Philander Smith by themselves. That's where the game was won for Philander Smith. Not saying that the team didn't do what they needed to do as a group, but when you've got 2 players who put up 11 in a quarter and outscore the other team by themselves, it's gonna mean a good thing for a lot of times. The rest of the game was pretty much even throughout. Like, it really was a close game, obviously by the score, until that fourth quarter when Myers and Lowe just took over, and it really just went down to that. They could not be stopped, and when you're hot, you're hot. They were cooking with fish grease, and sometimes when that happens, you got to just tip your cap to really, really, really good players. Even when you look at the one thing that Talladega did better than, they doubled Philander Smith's steals. Philander Smith was at 6, Talladega was at 13. But even still, Philander Smith won the turnover battle 14-17. So it kind of evened out. Like, it really was just the fourth quarter. If Philander Smith holds on and slows down Myers and Lowe a little bit more, they probably come out with that win. Or at least you're going into the locker room or going into the end of the game thinking, we played great, just didn't win. That happens a lot of times. You know, basketball is one of those sports where two teams can play perfect basketball through a full 40 minutes. One team got to win, one team got to lose. There's no ties. This isn't football, this isn't soccer. But instead, you're going into the next few games thinking, if we would have slowed those two down, what happens? You know what I'm saying? So I do think it's a tough pill to swallow from that standpoint. But again, sometimes players are just at this level, if they hoopers, they can hoop. And obviously Myers and Lowe got hot at the right time, and they just rode that wave. And credit to Talladega's the coaching staff and the players for understanding, like, these two are hot. Give them the ball till they cool off. Everybody else, get out the way, let them cook. They let them cook, and they got a win in conference that's going to help them against a team that I think I'm really high on probably repeating. Again, that's before, obviously, everything kind of starts shaking out for conference play. So very good win for Talladega. And again, worth a round of applause for the Tornadoes. Heading over now to the AAC. Bunch of games coming up for them. They play Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. Columbia, South Carolina versus Spartanburg. Again, I'm going to just talk about my picks for these games. I'm not really going to deep dive into them because a lot of these teams haven't played too much or not too much under their belt, and I'm not going to waste time doing that. I'm just going to give you guys my picks and my score, and we'll kind of keep it pushing from there. In that game, I've got Columbia actually with the win by 5. Bluefield versus, again, as of right now, receiving votes, Pikeville. I got Pikeville by 8. This is my upset game, though, because I do feel like Bluefield is this might be the most competitive game, in my opinion, of the day. Pikeville only having, again, 3 games, yes, but 2 exhibition games, only 1 real game that counts towards their schedule. I think it's going to be very interesting. Again, Bluefield, a very underrated team in the AAC. Bernal versus receiving votes Milligan. I've got Milligan by 15. I think they need to send a statement in this game, and I do believe they will do that in the end. Monterey versus Union. I got a dogfight, but I got Union coming out in that one. Trent McConnell versus Bryant. Trent McConnell by 2 possessions. Don't know a score, but I think they'll be able to eke it out by 2 possessions. And then Tennessee Wesleyan versus Ryan Hart. I give it a toss-up. You know, I could see either team winning. I could see either team losing, so I'm not really going to be able to call a game on that one. Heading over now to the CCAC. Receiving votes Governor State versus Holy Cross. I got Governor State by 20. St. Xavier versus St. Ambrose. I got St. Xavier by 12, maybe more. Trinity Christian versus Viterbro. I got Viterbro by 3. I think it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a close game. I think Viterbro comes out with the 3-point win. Receiving votes Olivia Nazarene and IU Northwestern. I've got IU Northwestern in the upset. I know it's going to be a tough one. I know Olivia Nazarene needs this game for sure, but not really on the best stretch right now. I do think it could be a great bounce back for them, but I'm going to rock with the team that I think has a little bit more momentum right now in this point of the season. And then Mount Mary versus Judson, that's my toss-up game. Could go either way. If you had to force me to pick, I'd probably go Judson for them. And for the AAC toss-up game, if you had to force me to pick, I'm probably going Right Hard. That's just, again, gut feelings. Not going to lie to you guys. Anything more than just quick looks at these teams, quick look at their schedules and stuff like that. And then the Frontier game, that's going to be, again, in week 3, so right on Thursday. Montana State Northern versus receiving votes Providence. I got Providence by 20 in that one. Not really much to say on that front. Now, last thing we'll talk about before you guys can start your week. Tuesday Spotlight. What a Tuesday we have. Cumberlands of Tennessee versus UT Southern. That's our sleeper game of the week. Number 10, IWU versus number 17, Indiana Tech. That's my upset alert. And number 4, Dakota State versus number 1, Dordt, game of the week. Could be game of the year potential, even though we're only in November. Start with the sleeper game of the week. For Cumberlands and UT Southern. I've already made my picks. You want to know those picks? Head on over to the Instagram so you guys can see that. Make sure you guys are following us on Instagram as well and on Twitter. I'm going to break down players to watch. I'm going to break down the key elements for this game, and then, again, we'll wrap it up for this episode. Try to keep it under the hour. We'll see. For Cumberland's, I'm looking at Riley Long, 13.4 points per game on 50+% shooting from the field, 8 rebounds per game. She's coming off of a 21-point performance. Very, very pivotal offensive player right now, leading the Phoenix, and I think she's going to need to have a very big game, especially in the paint, to be able to force UT Southern into some tougher matchups, some foul trouble, and just being able to get out to those shooters, having to respect Long's ability in the paint. Ty Buckley, 12.5 points per game, but it's the on-ball pressure that I'm really noticing for her. I think that's where she's going to be her biggest impact on the game. She leads the team in steals with 2.2, and when you've got a player on the other side like Silky, who's going to be predominantly on the ball, if you can make it tough for her through a full 40 minutes, even 30 minutes, it's going to help you throughout the game. So I do think from a defensive side of things, I'm looking at Ty Buckley to have a big game. And then Amelia Tarpley, all-around ability. Triple-double threat. I've seen her in person. She just is always at the right place at the right time, whether it's a rebound, a great play on defense, a big bucket, whatever it is. Not going to wow you from a standpoint of flash or anything like that, but she will sneakily look up at the box score and you're like, that girl's got 12, 8, 6. Where did those numbers come from? So I do think you got to keep an eye out for her, especially when you have some of the players on this other side, like for UT Southern, who are going to be legit. Some of those legit players are going to be Ashley Dickey, 17 points per game. I think a battle between her and Riley Long. Can they cancel each other out? When you've got two players like this who are professional scorers and can put the ball in the hole, can they cancel each other out? So if Riley has 20, can Ashley have 20? Because I feel like if one gets even a nod over the other, and by nod, I don't mean by a bucket. I mean, if one gets 20, the other one gets 25, I think the 25 is gonna be felt a lot more. But if it's like a 20 to 21, in my book, that's a cancel out. It's 1 point. You can make that up anywhere else. But I do think I'm going to look at that matchup throughout the game. Just from a standpoint, they're not going to be guarding each other a lot, but from a scoring standpoint, can they cancel each other out to give their team the best chance? And that kind of leads into my point I'm going to talk about in a minute here for one of the keys to victory for both of these teams. Silky, the girls' stat line is, again, longer than the Chick-fil-A line. 13, 5 steals, 9 assists, 9 rebounds. The girl is flirting with a triple-double. Talk about it for a second. Just for 1 second, can we realize what I just said? Yes, it's just 3 games. I don't care. It's 3 games. Some people can't even do it with 1 game. I don't care. But she's going to be a very important part for me for this UT Southern team. If she has a big game, Cumberlands are definitely going to be in for a tough one, for sure. And then for UT Southern, Rainey Reed and Lauren Smith combined, they put up 24 and 18. Those are going to be kind of segueing into one of my keys to victory for this game, the depth. I mentioned, I think Riley and Ashley are going to cancel each other out. They're going to have close to the same numbers of scoring. I will say Ashley does have 4 more points on Riley right now, just from a standpoint of averages. I do think Cumberlands have played more games, so that's kind of understandable. But there's still a point to make here. I do think they cancel it out, but keep an eye on Ashley maybe having a little bit of an edge. Ty has 12, almost 13 points per game. Silky averages about 13 points per game, so kind of even out there too. But to me, it's the depth of these teams. Both teams have at least 4 double-figure scores and have great point guard play on each respective side. Can the depth for one of these teams, which depth for one of these teams will come through? Who's going to be that 5th, 6th, 7th scorer that has maybe not a big night, but give me 10 off the bench. Another starter that's got 15 or 12. That's where I think the game is going to be won or lost. If we know what our top 4 are going to give us, who else can get us to that double-figure scoring, and who else can help the offense? That's my biggest thing for these teams. And then rebounding. Cumberland's holding opponents 31 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, UT Southern is allowing over 40. The rebound battle is what I'm going to keep an eye on, and then the depth. Whoever can control the rebound, and I don't even say control. I'm going to say if the rebound battle is controlled at all. What I mean by that is that number right there. If Cumberland's keeps UT Southern to 30 or below, and then UT Southern allows for 40-plus rebounds for Cumberland, in my book, Cumberland probably wins that game by like 10 or 12. I just feel like that's what's going to end up happening. But if the rebound battle is within 5 to 3 rebounds, all right, now look at the depth. I think the rebound battle is pretty much even. If it's a 5 plus minus for the rebounds, in my opinion, like, yes, it could be the last 5 rebounds of the game that hurt, and I understand that. But I'm talking about from just a general standpoint. If that's the case at the end of the game, I don't think the rebounds are really that big of a momentum shifting play. Because 5 rebounds, one bounce there, a tip there, like that. Those kind of, there's a reason on the stat sheet at the bottom where it says teams, just a random rebound that the team gets. So I can't really say that. As long as rebound battle is not more than 5 difference, I think that it's going to be a very nullified stat at the end of the game. And I turn back to the depth of both teams from the offensive standpoint. But I do think those are the 2 kind of points that I have from a winning standpoint for both of these teams. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it personifies what we meant by sleeper game of the week, where unranked teams, really good teams in their own respective conferences, could be a good night, good dogfight. I'm going to try and catch like all 3 of these games, to be honest with y'all. IWU versus Indiana Tech, upset alert. I think Indiana Tech, and the reason I say this, I know I broke down the previous game from a standpoint of like X's and O's in basketball. This one I'm breaking down from like energy, momentum. It's all about momentum. I have it right here in my notes. IWU needs this win for ranking purposes. Again, this game will not count towards Wednesday's rankings, but for the following ranking polls that come out in 2 weeks, a lot different. Because now, even though, let's say Indiana Tech jumps up to number 10, just spitballing here, and IWU drop to 15. To me, that Tuesday game, then we flip that. Then IWU is number 17, then you beat number 10. So like that's kind of how I look at this game. IWU needs this win because, from a ranking purposes, you lost 2 and 3. Understandable. You were underdogs in that one, but you can't lose to someone below you. Indiana Tech needs this game because you're coming off the loss against Huntington. That hurts. IWU more battle tested though, because you had to play 2 and 3. So you gone through some of the rigors of the game. Indiana Tech more rested. I think they're 3 games right now. And both teams have, again, suffered losses against ranked opponents. So that's kind of an even playing field. This game, to me, is a lot about momentum. Who can play off their experiences from the short season so far more than the other team? 2 and 3, receiving votes team, a scrappy receiving votes team that comes into your house and is able to win that game. Like, those type of things are what I'm looking at from a standpoint of not X's and O's, because both teams can execute very well. It's more the mental side of the game. Who can be better at the mentality part of a top 20 matchup in the NAIA. Last game, and I'll send y'all into Monday, into your week, really. Dakota State, number 4 in the country right now, versus number 1 Dordt. Both teams are averaging over 80 points a game. Both teams are holding opponents under 50. Dordt has 7 players scoring over 5, and that's not counting Gracie and Macy, who are both above, I want to say 15. Dakota State has 1 player over 5, not counting Tabor, Caitlin, and Sierra, who are all over 10. But they have 4 players that exactly have 5. So in my opinion, similar to the Cumberlands and UT Southern game, and I think it'll be a running theme with these top 5 matchups and pretty much the entire season. And it's nothing crazy, nothing groundbreaking stuff here. Depth will win you games. Or your stars will come through in big moments. This is a Final 4 possible game in November. There's a lot to still be unpacked from both teams. There's still a lot to go through. Neither team has even touched conference yet. There's so much that we haven't done yet. But that's what makes this game so fun. Because there's so much that we have not talked about yet. There's so much that we haven't gone through yet. Yes, Gracie and Macy are having an unbelievable season so far from a starting standpoint, from a scoring standpoint, from an impact on the game. When we talk about for Macy, one of the most impactful players throughout the NAIA. For Dakota State, Tabor, Caitlin, and Sierra, a legitimate big 3 right now in this young season. And you've got some great role players behind them that are just plug and play and just playing to their strengths. I don't expect a blowout. If there's a blowout either way, shocker. And again, blowout to me, 20 plus. 20 plus is a blowout to me. Especially in a game like this. Because 15, I know these teams can evaporate a 15-point lead like that. So, Dordt's the favorites, obviously. But I will say, my gut is saying it's going to be a dogfight. And if it stays close, I know Dordt's got experience. I'm not saying that from a standpoint of, but if it stays close, the pressure will shift from Dakota Wesleyan to Dordt. Dakota State, excuse me. Dakota State is coming in with house money. Now, not a lot of house money because you're still number 4 in the country. So it's not like this is a 1 versus 10, 1 versus 25. Like, no. You're both top 5 teams in the country. You're 2 of the teams that some people are picking as Red Banner favorites, and rightfully so. This game also, and this kind of came to me just now as I'm kind of talking through it. Dakota State, this is a tone-setting game for them because we've talked at length about the frontier this year and the wild, wild west that it's going to be. It doesn't get more wild, wild west than Dordt. If Dakota State wins this game, I don't care about how much. 1, 5, 50, whatever. The message it sends to the frontier, it's the new teams in there, the old teams from last year that were in the North Star, is astronomical. So there's a lot more riding on this for Dakota State from a future standpoint than Dordt. Dordt loses this game. Yes, it's a shock. Not a shock. Shock's a strong word. Yes, it's an upset. Yes, it's like, wow, that actually happened, whatever. But we're not going to overreact to it. We're just going to be like, that's a big loss. It'll drop them out of number 1 in the next polls. And it won't drop them out of number 1 for this polls, but the next polls. It's impressive, for sure. Offensively for Dakota State, you cannot have a quarter under 12 points. You can't do it. In the Grandview game that Dordt played against Grandview, and I want to say it was a 10-point game if I'm remembering correctly. One quarter was really where it was won or lost. That was the third quarter when Grandview had 8 points, and I think Dordt had like 15 or so. The rest of the quarters, again, it wasn't. I think Grandview still lost most of those quarters, if not all of them, but it was more, it was closer. You cannot have a quarter under 12 points if you're Dakota State. You can't do it. You do that, you're going to put yourself behind the 8 ball because now you got to make up for those points plus what you already had to do. If you put up at least 12 in each quarter, it's 12, 24, 48, 60. Still not enough. Don't get me wrong. But it's a lot easier to manage that. Comparing, to Dordt, where they're getting up to 90. Again, they're averaging 80 comfortably, but so are Dakota State. I think I'm relying more on Dordt's offense to be consistent out of these two teams. Not saying that Dakota State has a bad offense. I'm not saying that. But from these two teams, I'm giving the nod to the number 1 team in the country and the defending 2-time national champions. So you cannot have a quarter. I was going to say 15, but I'm going to give them 3 points and I'm going to say 12. Defensively, it's early in the season to really have a goal defensively like, oh, Dordt's been really good at this, they've been really good at that. Like, it's 3 games and really only one that they were kind of tested in so far. But anybody but 20. Gracie can't have her almost 20 points a game. You will not stop her. As a matter of fact, no one in this game right now or who's playing for either of these teams, you're going to stop them. You can contain them, but you're not going to stop them. When you're a professional scorer, when you're a professional bucket getter, you get buckets. You roll out of bed, you give somebody 20, and you go back to sleep like nothing ever happened. It was a fever dream. So you cannot go into these games expecting to stop anybody that is averaging 15-plus points on either team. You want to contain them. Keep them under their average. My focus would be for Dakota State. Don't let number 20 get off. She gets off, it's a wrap. And this is the reason I say that. Because I think it'll affect number 10. If Gracie's not scoring the way she can, I think it makes Macy now have to be more aggressive and be more focused on the offense, which then takes away from everything else she does so well from a standpoint of rebounding, playmaking, defense, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's like it's a double-edged sword for Dakota State. But if you let Gracie go crazy and do what she does, now Macy doesn't have to rely on the scoring as much, where instead of having to get to 20, 25, maybe she just needs 15 to 18. That's a light night for her. She gets her 9 rebounds. She gets her 5 assists, and now we're cooking. You can't stop them. You got to contain them or force them to do something that they don't want to do. I don't think Macy wants to be necessarily the leading scorer. I just think if she has to, she will. But I don't think she's trying to go out there being like, I'm going to be the number 1 scorer tonight. I'll make her have to be the number 1 scorer and see what happens. Sometimes when you play these players, and I'll end it on this, sometimes when you play against these teams where that they have just great, talented players, make them have to be great. Because no one is going to outscore a full team. If Mason goes out there and puts up 50, Dakota State is averaging 80 as a team. The numbers just don't lie. But if you've got Macy going out for 25, you've got Gracie going out for 30, that's 55 right there. Plus the rest of the team that's got scoring depth. Now it looks a little bit different. Overall, heck of a Tuesday. I'm excited to take it in. No, it's a little bit of a longer episode, but again, it was kind of a loaded episode. I wanted to get to a lot of things, and I think we got to everything with enough time that I like. So I hope you guys did enjoy all the way through. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.